In December of 2020, a young man was returning home from college for winter break. On the way, he took a wrong turn and subsequently crashed his vehicle. When police would later arrive at the site of the incident, they were confronted with a bizarre scene. Strangely enough, however, the man who crashed the vehicle was nowhere to be found. The young college student would never be seen or heard from again. This is the story of Jason Landry. Jason Landry was a 21-year-old student who was born in Augusta, Georgia, to his parents Kent and Lisa Landry. The family later moved to Missouri City, Houston, where he would spend the majority of his adolescent years. According to his friends, Jason was well liked by everyone and was always positive, no matter the situation. Growing up, he had a passion for music and was even described as musically gifted by his brother Kyle. As such, Jason was excited to be attending Texas State University in San Marcos in the fall of 2020 for the music recording technology program. On December 13th of 2020, after completing his first semester at the school, it was time for Jason to head home for winter break. It's believed that he embarked on the roughly 3-hour drive between San Marcos and Missouri City at around 10:55 p.m. that night. At 12:30 a.m. on the 14th, a volunteer firefighter contacted the Caldwell County dispatcher to report a damaged, abandoned vehicle that he found while driving along Salt Flat Road. This road is situated in Luling, Texas, very close to the path Jason was supposed to take to get home. Here's a part of that audio.
How may I help you?
Yes, ma'am. I can let you know it's Kellen with Southeast. I just come off of 1322 on the Salt Flat Road, and I'm about, I'm going to say 5 or 6 miles off of the highway, and I just come up on a vehicle that's in a ditch, and it appears that it's going to be he hit a fence. There's clothing and shoes all in the roadway.
Okay, did you find the driver?
I have not. I went up and down Salt Flat, and I haven't located him yet, but it appears that he grabbed a backpack or something out of his car, and he's thrown it in the middle of the road.
State troopers arrived shortly after this call and were met with the bizarre scene that the volunteer firefighter described. They ran the plates of the 2003 Nissan Altima and quickly discovered that it was registered to Kent and Lisa Landry. They proceeded to call the Landry residents to inform them about the situation, at which point Jason's father began making his way to the site of the incident. They also called a tow truck to have Jason's car taken to a nearby impound lot. Although it was already perplexing to police that the driver of the vehicle was nowhere to be found, what was most bizarre about the scene was the way Jason's clothes and possessions were strewn around the area. Every single article of clothing Jason was wearing, including his underwear and slippers, were all discarded along the road. It seemed as if he had stripped completely naked after the crash for some reason in the cold December weather. There was no indication to police as to why he would have done such a thing, however. Police also found his other possessions strewn along the road as well, including his bag and even his pet fish, which had perished due to the weather. Jason's father, Kent, arrived at the impound lot where Jason's vehicle was dropped off at roughly 5:30 a.m. on the 14th. Upon inspecting the car, he managed to locate Jason's phone in between the driver's seat and center console. The fact that the phone was in the car was strange in and of itself, because if Jason had access to it, why would he not have just called someone after he crashed? Following this discovery, Kent then took off towards the crash site where he arrived at roughly 6 a.m. and recorded a video of the scene. He proceeded to call local police stations and hospitals to see if anyone may have encountered Jason, but was unsuccessful in finding anything. Following this, a huge search effort to find Jason was undertaken using drone teams, helicopters, dogs, as well as over 100 personnel. They searched for Jason diligently over the course of 5 days, even draining a nearby pond to try to locate him. But he was nowhere to be found in the area. After the search, which covered over 50 square miles, police focused their attention towards Jason's car to see if it could give them any clues as to what may have happened to him. They were able to confidently determine that it was a single vehicle collision and no other cars were involved, but not much else. Police were then able to secure several search warrants to inspect the digital data in Jason's phone because this was the only other evidence they had. Through the Waze app, police saw that Jason had been going along Texas Highway 80 until he crossed the intersection at Hackberry Street, where Highway 80 becomes Austin Street. Around this time, he quit the Waze app and began using Snapchat, which is why police speculated that he missed the turn he was supposed to take at the intersection of Austin Street and Magnolia Avenue. His digital footprint ended at this point, but police further speculated that instead of making the turn, he continued straight along East Austin Street to Spruce Street, which turns into Salt Flat Road, where his vehicle was discovered. Investigators believe that the crash occurred because Jason went off the road and overcorrected, which caused his vehicle to hit a tree before being flung into the nearby fence line. It's bizarre that Jason continued nearly 4 miles along this path before crashing, however, because he was driving on a gravel road in a pitch-dark rural area with very few houses. He had already made the trip between Texas State and home twice, meaning he probably would have recognized that he was not on the correct path. This makes one wonder what he may have been doing and if he really did go on that road by accident. Furthermore, although the investigators were pretty certain they had a good idea of how the crash occurred, the enduring mystery is what happened after. Why did Jason remove all of his clothing in near freezing temperatures? And most importantly, where did Jason go after exiting his vehicle while completely naked? To attempt to answer these questions, 3 main theories were proposed. The first and most unlikely theory is that Jason had succumbed to his injuries he received during the crash and his remains were scattered around by wildlife. The area where Jason vanished housed a large population of feral pigs, a species that has been known to consume human beings, leading some investigators to speculate that this is what may have happened to Jason. There are several factors which go against this theory, however. For one, it's believed that Jason crashed his vehicle less than an hour before it was located by the volunteer firefighter. If so, it's unlikely that Jason succumbed to his injuries and was removed from the area in such a short period of time. The search for Jason began very soon after he disappeared and was extremely thorough, making it unlikely that not a single piece of evidence would have been discovered if he truly was in the area. Furthermore, police compiled thousands of drone photos from the search area and ran them through software that can detect bone fragments. The software managed to find 87 locations where there were bone fragments. However, after examination, it was determined that none of them were human bones. The last problem with this theory is that it doesn't explain why Jason removed his clothing. The idea that he crashed his vehicle, discarded all of his possessions and clothing along the road before lying down and succumbing to his injuries simply doesn't make sense in the eyes of many. The second theory, however, can possibly explain some of these bizarre occurrences. It was very cold in Luling on the night that Jason vanished. The trooper on the scene even described the winds as Arctic. The whole rear windshield of Jason's vehicle was completely shattered, meaning that these winds would have quickly made the interior of the car unbearably cold. As such, some investigators believe that Jason may have experienced hypothermia. This theory could potentially explain why Jason removed his clothing. During the early stages of hypothermia, the body will constrict blood vessels in the extremities in order to preserve heat and will instead redirect the blood to the core. During the later stages, when the body can no longer keep this up, warm blood from the core rushes to the freezing extremities, which causes the individual undergoing hypothermia to experience a hot flash. This can make them feel as if they're burning, even though in actuality, they're freezing to death. In many cases, this can make said individual remove all of their clothing because they may feel that they're unbearably warm. This process is called paradoxical undressing, and it could be one explanation as to why Jason removed his clothes. The hypothermia theory could also potentially explain why Jason was never discovered. Another process that often occurs in conjunction with paradoxical undressing is that of terminal burrowing. Terminal burrowing is a self-protective instinct wherein individuals experiencing hypothermia will enter small enclosed spaces, similar to hibernating mammals. This can often result in an individual ending up in a location that's hidden, which might make it difficult for investigators to find them. Although hypothermia can explain some of the oddities surrounding this case, many are still unsatisfied with this theory. Even if Jason had burrowed his way into a small enclosed area, there were only so many places in the vicinity where he could have done such a thing. With the thoroughness of the search, it's likely that all of these areas were investigated. Furthermore, hypothermia often inhibits one's ability to move, especially in the later stages, meaning Jason probably would not have made it too far from where he removed his clothing. Many believe that it's simply implausible that Jason's remains were in the area without being discovered, especially with the scope of the search for him. As such, some speculate that he was removed from the area. The third and final theory is that there was some sort of foul play involved. Abel Pena, a retired FBI agent who had a daughter in Texas State who knew Jason, decided to take on his case pro bono after hearing about it. He found what he described as several red flags regarding the disappearance. For one, he believes that Jason's clothing was staged. One reason for this is that Jason's bag was found roughly 900 feet from where his clothes were discarded. It doesn't make sense to him that Jason removed all of his clothing but then proceeded with just his bag on his back for another 900 feet during the late stages of hypothermia. As such, he thinks it's more likely that his belongings were staged in such a way to throw off investigators. Pena also mentioned how odd it was that Jason continued for so many miles along the gravel path. With the road being pitch dark at night, he believes there's simply no way that Jason would not have noticed that he was going in the wrong direction. He instead speculates that Jason was not distracted by Snapchat, but instead, something happened at the intersection which caused him to take an alternate route. Pena further mentioned that he had it on pretty good authority that there was a group in the area who had information regarding Jason's disappearance, although he did not elaborate any further. Pena was adamant, however, that his theories were not concrete and that he cannot conclusively state that foul play was involved until more evidence is discovered. The foul play theory was simply his opinion after 26 years in the FBI, where he dealt with many such cases. Thankfully, however, due to Pena's work, the Texas Attorney General's Cold Case Unit has agreed to take another look at Jason's case. This could potentially lead to more evidence being discovered in the future, which might help investigators officially determine what happened to Jason. While many theories have been put forth regarding Jason's disappearance, it must also be mentioned that the mishandling of his case by state troopers could have also played a factor in the mystery. Pena stated that the Caldwell County Police Force started off with the idea that no foul play was involved, and because of this, could have potentially missed crucial clues. He stated, quote, "If you go down that road of not believing anything happened to Jason that night, then you're not going to go down that road of talking to people." He firmly believes that if police had been more diligent, there could have been a different outcome in Jason's case. Although we may never know what happened to Jason Landry, we can only hope that the reopening of his case will provide more information as to what happened to him, and that the Landry family will one day have closure.